Hello and welcome to another Record Celtic Podcast. My name is Daniel Conn. I'm delighted to be joined by Record Sports' Craig Swan and Graeme Young. Guys, hope you're both good.
I'm okay, Daniel, thank you.
All good, mate, all good.
It's good to see you both. This is my favourite time of the week, and I don't mean lunchtime. Here we are again, another week on the Celtic Pod. I was actually just saying to Swanee there, when I was getting ready for this podcast, I was like, what are we going to talk about? But there's always plenty, Graeme. And I think the best place to start, Matt O'Reilly, PFA Player of the Year, nominated, and I think it's fair to say the favourite at the moment to win the award. Would you go along with it?
I think that's fair. I think Shankland's in a really good shout. Just when a non-Celtic Rangers player has such a good season and maybe others split the vote, sometimes you can... I think Craig Gordon's benefited to that a couple of times. But no, he's been brilliant, absolutely brilliant all season. First 6 months was great. Last year, played a lot of football under Ange. I think he's been pretty honest that maybe he personally didn't hit the heights that he'd hoped for in the season. It was brilliant for Celtic, but he's just a great fit for Rodgers' football. And at times, even in the first half of the season, when Celtic's general play was kind of called out by some, I think O'Reilly was brilliant. These kind of Stilian Petrov style runs, deep from midfield, a lot of the goals came for that. Just an excellent player. I know after the Atletico Madrid stuff, he personally said that maybe it played in his mind slightly, but he's formed the last few weeks again. Just that knack of getting in the box, big game player. You know you're a big game player when you score a Panenka at Ibrox, so I think that's a mark of him. He's just maturing into a kind of top talent, and just the latest kind of the maybe last 10, 15 years of Celtic players that seem destined to go and play for a really top club in Europe. And he's right in the mix. He's been fantastic.
As Graeme says, Swanee, Inter Milan are the latest club credited with an interest this week. Had that on Record Sport Online. Do you think you'll win Player of the Year, O'Reilly?
I think it's open. I think everybody in of the four nominees is a reasonable case. I think you could make claims for them all. I think O'Reilly's had an excellent season. I would disagree slightly with Graeme. I wouldn't say, disagree's maybe wrong, but I thought in the first half of last season he had to carry a very heavy burden with that injury to Callum McGregor. Matt O'Reilly was really the one who was tasked with taking over and playing Callum McGregor's role, and didn't miss a league game, didn't miss a minute, and it maybe caught up a little bit in the second half of the season. So I do know where Graeme's coming from in the sense he wasn't sparkling, but that was just through the work he'd done at the first half of the season. And it's actually unfair to call it the first half of the season because the way the season's weighted, it's more than half. And I think if you had this vote in January, Matt O'Reilly would have won it by a straight.
Aye.
I think. And now people, just at the time of the vote, he'd gone off the boil a little bit. I think over the course of the season, he would be my Player of the Year.
That's a good point for Swanee as well there. I think it was more, with O'Reilly's own words, where he kind of says, not that he was talking bad the last season, but I think he expected more. But that role he played when McGregor was out was massive. And it kind of second half of last season, Aaron Moy was a revelation for about 2-3 months after the World Cup as well. And that gave Celtic 4 top-level midfielders and McGregor, Hatate, Moy and O'Reilly. So the dynamics changed last season. But just in terms of Celtic again, it's just O'Reilly's, he's just the latest sign that I know Celtic sometimes are derided and transfers, but to get a player for MK Dons to come in what he's been able to do at Celtic, it's just another kind of indication of when they get these transfers right, they really pay off. And it's got to pay off in every way. You get a top talent that plays for Celtic, and then you can cash in. And that's the model, isn't it? That's how it's done. And I think, as Swanee says, it's a pretty open competition, but he's definitely right in the mix.
Do you think there's any way, Swanee, that you'll still be a Celtic player next season?
I think it's doubtful. I think there's always a way. If buying clubs don't come up with the money that Celtic are looking for, or the figures that they are putting forward, then the figures they would put forward, I should say, then I would imagine he would stay if the right offer isn't met. However, I do feel it will be, because I think most people can see what a good player he is. Right. And he's young as well. He's not old. You know, he's young. His best years are ahead of him. He's got everything. He's got vision. He can defend. That's one part of the game that he's really improved upon since he's been at Celtic and his time at Celtic. I think that period when he played that role when Callum McGregor was absent really helped him develop another side to his game. Actually, sometimes I made this point on the podcast last year. He's really good at winning set pieces in his own box. Or he was last year, actually, bizarrely. Celtic could do with that just now, actually, once or twice. But he just does a lot of unseen good work, as well as his ability to play passes. He's added goals to his game this season as well. He's got a lot, and you can imagine him going to a Spain or an Italy with his technical ability and really shining. So I would be surprised if a club doesn't come in with the money that Celtic are looking for. And he's given, 2.5 years now? It's now prime time, I would imagine, for him to move on. So I don't think any Celtic fan, I think as Graeme alluded to there, for the money that was paid, pound for pound, what a signing. Over 2.5 years, fantastic.
And Graeme, I know we've talked about this before, and I know it's how long's a piece of string and what have you, but transfer fees these days, I would love to see Celtic really play hardball with a player like Matt O'Reilly. It's like, okay, you can get your move, but you see, okay, good players, but players going for 100 million down south that are never worth that. I'm not saying he should go for 100 million, but I feel like Celtic should really play hardball this summer and get, as much as they can for undoubtedly probably their best player.
Well, that's fair. I think the devil's advocate argument to that would be maybe 25 million for Tierney, or 30 million, or 25 million for Tierney, 20 million for Tierney. Maybe that is a hardball fee. Then the other instance as well is that if you try and play it too much that way, you end up dragging on to the summer. And I know if Celtic go on to win the league, they're in the Champions League, the revamped guaranteed 8 games. I think this is a really important summer to build quickly and get in the right page, because too often, I know there won't be qualifiers if the league's won. If there is, there will be. Days of Dane Murray starting in defence, Bitton, Cole Touré next to O'Connell. No, it's a different position, but I think this is uber important for Celtic in Rodgers' second season, just to be aligned on the one page and move forward. And let's be honest with you, you say move quickly, but you've also got the Euros that now with the 26-man squad. I really went for pretty much a strong bet at the 23-man squad to guaranteed at the 26. So he's got to that comes into play as well. But I imagine he's the type of player that the scouting's, it seems cliches, it's always been important, but his age, his profile, what they'd have to pay to maybe an equivalent player in a top 5 league, I just think it'll appeal to the teams we've mentioned. Atletico would likely come back in. Inter makes sense. Inter would be a fantastic move, because not to go too football hipstery here, but I think Simone Inzaghi, they're honestly a brilliant team. They'll be absolutely gutted they went out of the Champions League when they did, because he's just taken them on to a different level. Seems like an unbelievable team to play for. They've already got a midfielder come from Napoli, Zielinski, who probably might factor into that as well, but I think that'd be an amazing move for O'Reilly. I think it'd be perfect. So I think there's a balance there between getting the most for a player, but also doing it in a timely fashion. I think that is really important, because it allows Celtic to do their own business as well.
Aye, I think that's a fair point, the kind of time constraints they'll be under. See, just going back to the PFA awards, Swan, another one that was kind of, I thought, interesting was the Manager of the Year awards. I know you're going to speak to John McGlynn at Falkirk today, and it was him, Derek McInnes and Tony Docherty who made the shortlist. All have had brilliant seasons. I think it's really hard to call. But did you think it was a bit weird? Brendan Rodgers can still win a double, and he wasn't in the shortlist. Is that? I mean, I know it's not been a vintage Celtic season, but it would feel a bit strange if he's got 2 trophies at the end of the season. He wasn't even in the shortlist.
I think a lot of that comes down to the timing of the voting, and we have this situation every season where, the votes are taken before the last pieces of silverware are handed out, and you often get this argument. I think the 3 lads, or the 3 men that have been nominated, it's all down to overachievement. I think, John McGlynn at Falkirk could go through an entire league season unbeaten. That's overachievement. Derek McInnes could get 4th at Kilmarnock into Europe. That's overachievement. Dundee coming up, newly promoted. Tony Docherty could get 5th, could get Europe. That's overachievement.
Aye.
I don't think any Celtic fan would say Celtic have overachieved this season. Would that be fair?
Aye, that's fair. That's definitely fair.
And I think there's been other tremendous candidates. Stephen Naismith's done great at Hearts. Stephen Robinson's done another great job at St Mirren. There's loads of guys down the leagues that have done well. I think the nominations are based on overachievement. And the 3 guys who have been nominated have all overachieved at their clubs, I would say. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure Brendan Rodgers would see even himself as having overachieved this season.
So he said that.
I think it's probably fair with 3 men in it that he's not in it.
He said that, Graeme, didn't he, after they went at Danes Park last weekend? He said, well, I'll not be in it, and we kind of laughed. But I think Swanee makes a fair point. The overachievement, it does kind of make sense when you look at it that way.
Yeah, but I think one thing with Rodgers, I think he's in his element right now. There's obviously coming back, he had the bit between his teeth anyway, but it's probably not popular. But I thought when Celtic have consistently lost in the Champions League for a long time, it's hard to try and pick crumbs of comfort. But I felt tactically he'd matured in the Champions League, right? The biggest games this season, I thought Feyenoord away they were doing really well until Hearts' goal, right? The mistake from Hart that led to Feyenoord's goal. The home game set up pretty well, not too defensive, good in the counter-attack, and then the Rangers, games against Rangers this season, I think it set up some, been right on in all these games as well. So as much as it's not been the problems have been in games where maybe expected to win the Kilmarnock Hearts doubleheader in December with the drop points. That wasn't ideal. But I've found Rodgers, he's just relishing the biggest games. I think he's ready now. Obviously, that won't result in Manager of the Year gongs, but I think with what he's had in the squad, the injuries he's had, I think it's been a pretty strong coaching season. And I think since, what would it be, Motherwell away in February? I think since that win that day, that it's felt that a team is always going to finish the season strongly. So it won't result in the usual kind of glitzy award dinner nights, but I think personally, and maybe the people at the club will take a lot of satisfaction if it results in a double before the end of the season.
It should be said, Daniel, that if Brendan Rodgers and Celtic win a League and Scottish Cup double this season, it's a fantastic season.
Aye.
Because it's only because Celtic have been so incredible at winning trebles that people now kind of look at them almost. No one takes a treble for granted, but there's a feeling. I almost felt when Celtic beat Inverness in the cup final last year, it was like another treble among some supporters, which is incredible, really. That I think people will look back on this period in 25 years' time and maybe go, "Wow, that was just ridiculous." There was a time 10, 20 years ago, if you won a League and Scottish Cup double, that was a magnificent season. It still is a really good season. Yeah. And regardless of what power Celtic have financially over the rest of the clubs in Scotland, and apart from Rangers, it's still a fantastic season to win a League and Cup double. And if Brendan Rodgers does it, he'll have done great. But at this type of nominations and overachieving, I'm just not sure he was in the top 3.
Aye, I definitely think as well with the kind of challenge Rangers have put up this season, you can't take that for granted. I mean, I agree. I think a double would be not an historic season, obviously, but I mean, what is it? Is it something like 5 trebles in 8 years or something like that?
Graeme uses the right phrase: a really strong season.
Aye, that's true.
That on paper. But yeah, you can look at performances and we can talk all day about whether the football's been up to the levels that the supporters would have been looking for. A lot of the days it hasn't been. But when you look back on the end of the season, what trophies are in the bank? And if they've got 2, that'll be pretty good. And I do agree with Graeme. I thought the Champions League was better this year.
Yeah. Graeme, you mentioned the Motherwell game in February there, which could prove to be a bit of a turning point. On that day, Adam Idah, I always pronounce his name wrong. Adam Idah, scored twice that day. It was the match winner for Celtic. Mm-hmm. One of the most best performing stories on Record Sport this week has been about the potential fee that Celtic might have to pay to make it a permanent move. I think the number being floated about is somewhere between 5 and 6 million. Do you think he's worth that?
100%. Like that, he's been. Idah's been one of the kind of welcome stories this season for Celtic, and he summed up where the club were end of January. That it was just, it was a tough sell, wasn't it? A player that wasn't playing for Norwich. A lot of people who kind of knew him through the Island setup and maybe watched him, maybe not convinced. But he's been excellent. He's been really, really good. And I think he was probably unlucky not to start against Dundee at the weekend. I just felt that game suited him more than Kyogo. Kyogo wasn't great. I know he got the own goal, but he was pretty good off the bench. But it's his all-round play that Celtic have really benefited from. Like the goals have been great, and I think that his knack for finishing's been obviously welcome. But I just like his hold-up play. See the games where he can really kind of change the dynamics as well. and that kind of fee for what Celtic have witnessed the last few months seems more than fair. That's a going rate. An emerging striker on the way up. Celtic can't judge him on the fact he wasn't scoring for Norwich. They can only take it what they've been able to see since he's come in. I don't know. I know he's pretty coy. I know all players probably play it down, but about the thought of staying at Celtic, I don't know if that's what he wants or what the move will come after. But I think he'd be a real asset to Celtic. I think he's been a proper signing that's kind of shifted the dynamic of the season. The goal, as we say, Motherwell was massive, but Easter Road as well. But just at Ibrox when he came on, him and Bernardo, that's what Celtic haven't had this season, and they've only started to get now, is if the first 11 isn't working, there's been a lot of talk about the two halves of Celtic, some games starting fast, not finishing it off, other times vice versa. But I felt the two subs, I know Yang and McGregor struggled at Ibrox, but Bernardo was strong and so was Idah, and I think that's a level of player for Celtic to beef out their squad as well. But I don't see any reason if he did sign permanently he couldn't become a starter. I genuinely have been so impressed with what he's been able to bring to Celtic. I think there might be another level for him to go as well. Just think he gets how to play for Celtic. He seems a perfect fit. Like, you don't want to keep comparing players, but Dembele gave Celtic a physicality under Rodgers. That first season, it was probably at their best, alongside Scott Sinclair in the form of his life. But that's what Celtic need. I think it mixes up what Rodgers does, the passing, and then you can go direct as well. And I think Idah, you can do that regularly. He's good in behind as well. So I think it should be a must sign. If he wants to sign, I think it's a good price, isn't it? Like, you can shop around Europe and see these players who play in kind of unfancied leagues, and you might unearth a Miovski style player, but it's not easy. I think Idah fits the brief perfectly. If it's up to me, I'd sign him in a heartbeat. It's been brilliant.
He's on 7 goals in 7 starts at the minute, Swan. And the current climate, is 5-6 million a fair price for Adam Idah?
Yeah, I think it's a perfectly fair price. We've started the podcast talking about guys at a certain age and demanding top dollar for Matt O'Reilly. Well, Norwich are entitled to do something similar. And listen, we discussed it on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. It's not that long ago Celtic were paying £4 million for Patrick Clement. Said it then, I'll say it again.
That's very true.
You know, and there's been a variety of strikers who've walked in the door. Stefan Skipovic and such like for large fees, not far off £5 million. So if you've got £5 million for someone that's going to guarantee you goals, I don't see where the issue is.
Right. I interrogated Michael Gannon on last week's Celtic podcast.
Oh, that doesn't sound pleasant.
I'm going to put you both on the spot with the same question. Assuming they're both roughly the same fee, who would you go for, Miovski or Idah?
Ooh.
It's a tough one.
It's a tough one. Do you know, for fear of criticism from the Aberdeen listeners, if there are any, I just think Adam Idah's proven he can score at Celtic. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but there has been players who have come from clubs out with the old firm into the old firm in Glasgow and haven't really done it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not suggesting for a second that Bojan Miovski can't do it. Might come in and score 35 goals. But I would, if it was me, I'd rather take the one who's been there and done it. It
takes more than talent, Graeme, doesn't it, to perform in the kind of white-hot atmosphere in Glasgow.
Well, you heard me there for 2 minutes extolling the virtues of Adam Idah, right? And I'm going to do like the bit in Toy Story when Woody gets dropped, and I'm going to choose Miovski. He's my Buzz Lightyear in this scenario. I think he's brilliant, honestly. Sometimes you just see a player, don't you? And I thought the first goal against Celtic in the semi-final, the pass was something that De Bruyne would have pulled out, and obviously the finish skimmed off Hart before going in. But those type of level of passes are the type he'd be likely to get at Celtic. And you just think what he's been able to do at Aberdeen, what a disastrous season it's been, even last year as well. You could just imagine a fully functioning Celtic team. Miovski just feels like that type of player that's going to have a great career. And as much as I like Idah, if the option is between the two, I think that maybe says how highly I think of Miovski. So sorry, Adam, after giving you the big sell, you can stop listening 2 minutes early.
I'm sure he'll cop, Graeme.
Exactly. I know. I'm sure he'll be fine. Miovski for me.
Well, I guess we'll find out in the summer. If one, if not either, maybe both will be in the hoops next season. We'll see. Right, to finish, guys, massive game at the weekend for Celtic, Swan. Hearts, I know it's at home, but Hearts have beaten Celtic home and away this season. And it's definitely not going to be an easy game for Celtic. I don't know. I feel like I've got a wee bit of fear going into this game. I feel like it's going to be very tricky.
I think the situation is very simple. Celtic play, they win. I mean, that's and that goes for all of the remaining games this season. They play as they can, they win. The problems come when they don't. I mean, if you look at the form book this season, you talk about the matches against Hearts. The first game of the meeting of the teams this season at Tynecastle, I would still argue is Celtic's best performance of the season. They're absolutely outstanding and tore Hearts to bits. Won the game easy. Played the next game at Celtic Park, didn't turn up, beat. Yeah. Third game's a bit more difficult to judge because it was a kind of itchy-peachy start. Celtic started okay, and Graeme's friend Adam Idah missed a penalty. And within 5 minutes, we had the now never to be forgotten, spoken about forever red card for Yang, and that changed the dynamic of the game in Hearts' favour. So it's hard to know how that game would have gone had it been allowed to be played out 11 against 11. But Celtic certainly started well enough. But if Celtic play, they'll win. If the front six, if you like, play, they win. But it's also very important to defend properly. There was far too many free headers given up at Dens Park. Far too many. Aberdeen scored 2 goals at Hampden against Celtic with headers from the same place, from the same delivery. Dead balls at Dens Park last week. Dundee won lots of them. And I think Joe Hart, one was headed straight at Joe Hart, and I think the rest missed the target. If you look at the first goal Lawrence Shankland scored at Celtic Park in December, exactly the same in November. Same one. Everybody dragged under the ball, blockers. Lawrence Shankland's on his own at the back post. In fact, I think he did the same at Ibrox as well against Rangers. Same thing. Scores with a header at the back post. If Celtic don't defend properly, he will punish them in a way that Dundee players didn't. If they defend properly and they play well, they win. It's that simple.
I completely agree, but Graeme, I think we're actually in the territory now. If Celtic beat Hearts and beat Rangers, the next 2 games, they've effectively won the league. They'd be 6 points clear.
It's done, Daniel. Celtic beat Hearts and Rangers on their own patch in the next 9 days. It's done.
Aye, that's it.
100%. I think Swanee touched on there about the crosses, right? So as much as I was bigging up Rodgers and the ability since probably third part, just to kind of really hone in, title, take each week, there's been a real bit between the teeth. Going to Ibrox, and I know Rangers came back, but most of that performance was excellent, right? But I think the issue here, there's structurally something wrong with the way Celtic set up. The amount of that's unsustainable. You can't expect teams every week to get that many chances. And I think fans normally fall in the kind of Scales and Taylor side when the ball comes into box. Carter Vickers still kind of stands up tall, but they need to find a way. Forget this taking it week to week and kind of like title talk style mantras and I think pure coaching. Rodgers is an extremely intelligent manager. I think he's got to find a way to mitigate that, because that's where Hearts. Kingsley's delivery is always been good, and Shankland is dangerous. It's like even if Hearts don't get the volume of chances that they've been coughing up at times, Shankland's the level of player that can, if they only get one good chance, he might be good enough to take it. I just think they need to find a way. On the front foot, they've been, as Swanee says, Celtic play their way, they'll win. I just think with Hatate coming back in, Riley as well, they're just able to move the ball quicker. Everything's going a bit faster. Maed is a big one at the weekend as well if he comes back in. Often, maybe not always as slick when he plays, but the energy and just that feels like type of game. This is like a precursor for the Rangers game. It'll be the same style, high intensity, push the opponents back in home turf. I don't think the 2 games will actually go that dissimilar style. And there's no, but I think they have to find a way of. I thought the Dundee second half was just poor. Like you're always going to be under pressure. You look over title races in the dawn of time. There's going to be periods where you really come under pressure. But I felt Celtic got out of Dens Park through a bit of luck as well. I just felt it was the tighter half chances that Dundee were creating. You can't ride the wave, and that you'll get punished if that happens again. And I think they need to find a way to stop that. I don't know how they do it. I don't know if the shape, but just maybe. I don't know. This is what on Rodgers. I don't even know if the formation changes, but it just feels on the back of the Aberdeen crosses for the left hand side. There's got to be a way to mitigate that. I think that's on Celtic to sort that before the weekend.
And it feels like Liam Scales is taking a bit of the brunt, a bit of the criticism for that as well.
He's been good, but I think at times he isn't dominant in the air, is he? That's as much as he's good at a lot of things, but he feels that players can get a run on him. He feels that sometimes he isn't aware that players are around about, especially those Aberdeen goals. But I think there's got to be a way. So I don't think it is bringing. And Narochi's He's the one player who gets better the more he doesn't play. Same with Lagerbielke as well. I think Scales has been really strong considering where he's come from this season. He's really stood up to things. But even the best players in the world have got faults, and I think Scales at times, when he gets physical, a lot of balls in the box, I think he really needs to stand up to the challenge that comes Scottish football.
Right, very finally, guys, put you in the spot one last time. Predictions for the weekend? Don't all rush at once.
Sorry, I was Celtic will win.
I think Celtic win as well. I think they'll play well. 3-1 Celtic.
Interesting. I guess we'll find out, and we'll be back next week with another Record Celtic podcast. Guys, as ever, thank you very much. It's a pleasure. And thank you very much for listening at home. Cheers.